So sometime, well, I can tell you what it was. Somewhere in the late 80s, early 90s, Discovery Channel in America ran a documentary series that was made in the UK called The Incredibly Strange Film Show. It was hosted by Jonathan Ross, a British TV presenter, as they call them over there, and it featured different sort of cult filmmakers from around the world. And one of them was Jackie Chan, who at the time I only knew as the Kung Fu guy from the Cannonball Run. Didn't know he really had done much of anything else. And I could not believe what I was seeing and how amazing these Hong Kong action movies that he made were. So through that, I started getting into Hong Kong movies. And as the 90s rolled on, I was going to see them in theaters in Boston. They would do Hong Kong marathons. We were going to Chinatowns and picking up DVDs. And I was just all in because they were the best action movies probably ever made, but certainly that were being made at that time. One of the people, told you that story to tell you this one. One of the people in those films who was an icon of Hong Kong action in the 80s and 90s was Sammo Hung. You might know him from Martial Law, TV series that was done again, I think, I want to say later 90s, early 2000s, where it was essentially Rush Hour, the TV series. He was a Chinese cop, Hong Kong cop who came over to LA to work on a case or to work with the LA cops or something like that. And it was basically Sammo Hung doing his thing every week on TV. It was really, really fun. Eventually, they brought in Arsenio Hall. They turned it into too much of a Rush Hour knockoff, and it quickly died. But anyway, Sammo Hung was really great. He's in Enter the Dragon. He's in a ton of movies from the 70s on, and he's great. Why I bring him up, funny you should mention Sammo Hung. Arrow Video now has released kind of a pretty huge movie that Sammo Hung did called The Millionaires Express, a.k.a. Shanghai Express, from 1986. This was an all-star kind of epic Eastern Western martial arts comedy that Sammo Hung directed and stars in. And the cast is crazy. So I'm going to say a lot of names right now, and if you're not a fan of Hong Kong films, you probably will go, okay. But if you are, you might recognize some of these. You have Yuen Baio, you have Yuen Wah, you have Richard Eng, you have Cynthia Rothrock, you have Richard Norton, you have Edward Sang, you have so many I can't even really say them all. But if you're a fan of Hong Kong movies from the 80s and the early 90s, there are not a lot of people who were in movies back then who aren't in this movie. It's kind of crazy. And you recognize just about every face. So the basic story here is Sammo is this rough and tumble guy who is sort of always on a little bit wah. He's always on the edge of the law. And he's on the run from like a federal marshal who wants to get him. And he settles down in his old hometown and he runs a brothel. He basically somehow takes charge of a brothel in one town and brings it to his small hometown, which is like in the middle of nowhere and in the mountains, desert mountains, and not a lot going on in this little town. So he has this gigantic hotel and he fills it with his ladies and he figures he's gonna service the locals. Yuen Baio is Eric Sang plays the chief of police who's very crooked. Tries to start a fire to start a diversion to rob a bank. This is the chief of police. And Yuen Baio is the sort of fire chief who basically takes over the town as the law and the fire chief. And there's a lot going on in this movie. Not going to get into all the plot. There's a lot going on in this movie. The titular Millionaires Express is this choo-choo train that is filled with generally pretty affluent people, and there's multiple little stories going on in that. On the train is something that Eric Sang's people want to rob. On the train is something that some other group of people involving Cynthia Rothrock and Richard Norton. There's a giant group of people. They want to rob the train for some reason, and Sammo wants to basically stop the train so that everybody on the train has to get off and come to his town and spend a lot of money. And he's doing it, out of the kindness of his heart so that the local economy will be boosted and his whorehouse, and comedic hilarity ensues. Basically, as far as I'm going to tell you here, the train does get stopped, and everybody on the train gets off the train, and all of the myriad little intricate subplots all come together in the town. Not a tremendous amount of martial arts in this film, surprisingly. What is there is very good, And there's some really good set pieces between Sammo and Yuen Baio and Sammo and Cynthia Rothrock and multiple other people. You have Japanese swordsmen in this film. You have, it really is like an all-star kind of epic. And it takes place in snowy mountains and in this little, I say desert, it's kind of a desolate area and, you know, in the thick of Hong Kong, all over the place. And it's very funny. The subplot with Richard Eng as this guy, henpecked husband whose mistress is also on the train, leads to some pretty high-end bedroom farce kind of stuff and kind of a laugh or giggle out loud sequence where multiple people are hiding in a room and it's just, there's a lot going on in this movie. So, I will say this about the film overall. Very, very funny. Not as much food as you would expect, but the food that is there is good. And just great to see all these people working together. There is a scene that I've never forgotten with Yuen Baio where there is a 4-story building, I think, that's on fire, literally. And he stands at the top, does a flip in the air on his way down, lands on his feet, walks over, delivers lines of dialogue, and then walks off camera. It's insane. That's why I love Hong Kong movies from that era. It was all real. Maybe there'd be a little wire work here and there, but not much. No special effects. It was just people who were really good at doing things or willing to basically be killed to do something amazing on film. Millionaires Express. This arrow set, I spent all that time to tell you this. This arrow set is crazy. So a lot of times in the old days of Hong Kong cinema, you'd get maybe multiple edits of a film. Sometimes a Japanese version of a film would be longer. Like in the days of in some of Jackie Chan's films, they'd be longer in Japan because he was hugely popular there. So if there was a film that he was in a little bit, they would maybe put a little bit more of him in there for Japan. There would be versions sent, export versions, they call that, for English-speaking territories that might be cut down a little bit. Maybe some of the when the Chan films came out here, when Miramax and New Line, when a lot of people really first heard about Jackie Chan is from Rumble in the Bronx onward, when his films were getting released here in theaters regularly. Those were all cut by 10 minutes or more to basically just get to the action and take out the overtly Chinese aspects of these Chinese movies. And so there's those. So this arrow set has 4 versions, I believe. I'm going to glance at my notes to confirm this. Disc 1 has the Hong Kong theatrical cut of the film, which is 97 minutes. It also has an extended cut, which is 101 minutes. There's commentary. Frank Cheng does, and Frank Cheng is a guy who was involved with Tai Sang Home Video, which was a Chinese company, I believe they were based in China, who brought a lot of Hong Kong movies to home video in the US for the first time. Initially just basically marketing to Chinatowns and Asian populations, but eventually us English speakers found out about him too. And he's been doing a lot of commentaries and extras for these arrow sets. And interestingly enough, I believe they keep referring to this as an imprint set. He keeps referring to it in the extras as being done for a different British company who specializes in cult movies, but this is the arrow set. So there's a Frank Cheng commentary. There's a commentary by Mike Leader and Arne Venemena, sorry. It's on the extended cut. The Frank Cheng commentary for the theatrical cut is very fact-based. He has dealt with and interviewed a lot of the people involved in Hong Kong cinema, so he has a lot of anecdotes and things like that. The one with the commentary with Mike Leader and Arne Venema on the extended cut is a lot more jokey. Now, these guys also have worked in Hong Kong and know a lot of the players. This one's a lot more jokey and I don't want to say mocking toward the film, but it treats the material lightly and a bit more gossipy. There's a lot more, some say in this one, which was kind of interesting because you don't usually get that on commentaries, at least for this kind of material. So I would say between the two styles, I always prefer the more serious, but that one was fun. There's a select, this is cool too. There was a select scene commentary with Frank Cheng and Cynthia Rothrock. If I have a beef with commentaries, the big beef burger with commentaries I have is when people don't talk. When they just clam up and you're just essentially watching the movie again, waiting for them to talk. I usually am watching the commentary solely to hear the people talk. I usually don't even look at the screen unless they go, hey, look at that. So I'm usually doing something else and listening to it. And if there are huge stretches because the person doesn't have anything to say about the movie, to me, it's kind of a waste of my time. I want to like be able to fast forward. Now, some commentaries have done, like the Ben-Hur commentary on DVD did something very cool with Charlton Heston, where he only commented on certain sequences. They let you chapter forward, or it would only play those sequences. And that was great because you didn't waste 3 hours to hear 30 minutes of what he had to say. That's what they do with Cynthia Rothrock here. Select scene commentary. It's 17 minutes. It just runs straight through the 17 minutes of what she had to say, but it's a lot of fun and very interesting, and she's really cool. If you don't know who Cynthia Rothrock is, find out. She's amazing and very cool. Then we have interview with Cynthia Rothrock. There are actually 3 interviews with Cynthia Rothrock that were done at different periods of time. A lot of the same content gets covered between her commentary and some of the stuff Frank Cheng says and some of the material here, but there's enough unique that it's all worth looking at. One was done for a previous release of the film, one was done for her website, and one was a new interview done for this set. Those together total about 3 hours, 30 minutes. There are interviews with Sammo Hung. Again, these are 2 archival interviews. I want to say some of these were done for the Hong Kong Legends releases that was originally a UK company. Some of those got ported over here by Miramax on the Dragon Dynasty label years ago. So it's about a half-hour total of Sammo talking about making of this movie and who he worked with and his history with Yuen Baio and all that. And it's very fun and interesting. You have a Yuen Baio interview from, again, a previous edition from some other company of this. That's 21 minutes. That's very interesting, where he just talks about being a stuntman and the difficulty of what he does and his career and his relationship with Sammo Hung and all that. I quite enjoyed that. Yuen Baio's amazing. And you have a UK Oshima interview that's 30 minutes. That was, she was a Japanese actress who played one of the Japanese swords people in this film, and that was, again, fun and interesting. And I believe that was an older interview as well. And then you have alternate English credits. So the credits for the English version called Shanghai Express, those will play out at the beginning and the end. And you have the trailers for the film. You have the Hong Kong theatrical trailer, you have the Shanghai Express export trailer, and you have the Tai Sang video promo trailer, which was just a trailer that was done more recently for the Tai Sang, I want to say, DVD release. And, okay, now disc 2. I am looking at the notes over here. Disc 2 is, okay, it's 2 more versions. So in total, you get 4 versions of this movie here. You have the English export version, which runs 92 minutes, which is shorter than the Hong Kong version that was 97. And then you have the hybrid cut. The hybrid cut attempts to take everything that's exclusive to any version and put it all in one. So the hybrid cut is actually what I watched. Now, for better or worse, I tend to watch the longest versions of something, figuring I'm seeing it all. I'm seeing as much as there is to see. Sometimes I do that, and I mention it in these reviews, and somebody says, that's the worst version. You picked the worst version to watch. That doesn't represent the movie at all. Well, I watched the hybrid version. And I liked it. I liked it. You know, it felt maybe like a little long, but if some of the funny comedy and goofy stuff was cut out, that would be a shame. All the actors are just sort of a delight in this, so it would be a shame to not see more of them. So I'm glad that I watched the hybrid version. Someday when I watch this again, I'll probably watch the Hong Kong just to see, you know, what Sammo intended this film to be. One thing I forgot to mention earlier until I just saw it, Jimmy Wang Yu, aka Wang Yu, who I've reviewed other films that he was in that have been released recently. He plays the father of Wong Fei Hung in this film, and you see a wonderful scene, 2 great scenes with these guys. And he comes up and meets another older master, who was, I can't remember his name, but he was the guy who played the evil bad guy in Enter the Dragon. So you have these 2 guys and their kids. So Wong Fei Hung is a legendary Chinese character, historical figure and character. Jet Li played him, I think it was Jet Li, in a bunch of movies. And so you have the 2 fathers and the 2 sons, and the kids engage in a little bit of combat with each other, and they're always wanting to beat each other up. They're a little bit of combat utilizing the styles that their characters made famous in the films on the train platform. And then there's a great scene that to me is as good as, it's like a Marx Brothers scene. It's like a Three Stooges scene. They are in a train car, stateroom, what do you call it? They're in one of those little cars in a passenger train where you've got the window on the side and they're facing each other. And there's a lot of tension. And every time the train goes through a tunnel, you hear whoosh, 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 and somebody is a little bit beaten up, and nobody wants to admit that they did anything. And they keep going through tunnels, and they get progressively more beaten up. And I think that's a brilliant scene. And I hope every version of this film contains that scene, because any version that doesn't have it is a poorer version of that movie. It's very funny. I did notice, I saw here in my notes, okay, I'm a big fan of the Cannonball Run. It's my favorite movie. And Golden Harvest, who produced Millionaires Express, also produced the Cannonball Run 5 years before this movie came out. The end of this movie is pretty reminiscent of the Cannonball Run when you think about it. The end of this movie, the setup is the mode of transportation has had to stop for some reason. Everybody is killing a little time in this dusty little pull-off area, and a huge melee breaks out. Well, that's what happens at the end of Millionaires Express. Everybody has been stranded in this town, and this huge fight breaks out that involves pretty much everybody in the movie, and it's just a heck of a lot of fun. So I'm at the end of what I have to say here. It's been a long time for one movie, but there's so much movie in this movie. One other thing too, the number of people who fall from great heights, and we either see land on the ground in a wide shot or land on their feet in a wide shot. Well, it's more than your average film. Let's just say the aforementioned Yuen Baio stunt isn't the only time in this movie that we see somebody from top of a building straight to the ground in one shot hit it. And it's a testament to the power and brilliance of the stunt coordinator and the stunt team that people walked away from this movie. So available now on Blu-ray from Arrow Home Video. I must recommend, from 1986, Sammo Hung's The Millionaires Express.